Hey guys, welcome to Pillbox Movies. I'm Hank, and today we're going to be watching the 1968 psychological horror, The Hour of the Wolf. The year is 1968. In America, Stanley Kubrick is releasing 2001: A Space Odyssey. John Schlesinger is working on Midnight Cowboy, and over in England, Carol Reed is releasing Oliver. Oliver might be an American production. It can't be. But while all this is going on, what's happening with Ingmar Bergman in Sweden? Well, he's working on this. Hour of the Wolf is the story of a painter, played by Max von Sydow, who resides in a remote island with his wife, played by Liv Ullmann. He's worried that his mind is being taken over by hallucinations and visions of dark monsters biding their time, waiting to strike in the darkest hours of the night. Seems like, reasonable February stuff to me. A good Valentine's Day fare. Yeah, we're having a little bit of a Bergman moment on this channel. I'm interested to see how it turns out. And yeah, before we go on, if you are enjoying these videos on old, obscure, and art house movies that maybe you haven't checked out before, give it a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Reckmeister Harmoniac. Shh, that's a secret, don't tell anybody. Photographed by Sven Nykvist, the famous cinematographer Sven Nykvist, famous for his collaborations with Bergman. He also worked a little bit with Woody during his shopping period in like the 2000s, where he shopped through all the great cinematographers of the Western canon and summarily dismissed all of them after one film, except for Vittorio Storaro, who I believe he still works with. I liked Vittorio Storaro's work on I don't know if he did, but it's not the greatest movie, but it had a great look to it. I kind of like the artifice of that intro, like they were setting up not a documentary feel to it, but sort of like a true crime series, like a recreation. Our Lady Leave. Beautiful, beautiful Liv Ullmann. Okay, so it is going for a documentary format.
Du undrar varför jag tänker stanna här. Jag har tänkt stanna här till augusti. Vi skulle vara alldeles ensamma.
But then there's a home invasion. Yo, this is gonna be all of the horror movies wrapped up into one. There's gonna be a home invasion. There's gonna be a supernatural baby.
Han tyckte om att jag var tystlåten.
There's gonna be a demonic possession. There's gonna be a daddy who sacrifices himself at the end or falls into insanity. Getting distinct Wicker Man vibes. Arrival on an island of supernatural forces our little Christian minds couldn't comprehend. Portrait of a young artist going insane. It's a big-ass island. They have this all to themselves? Well, I mean, they don't have it all to themselves. Oh, look how young Max von Sydow looks. I apologize if I don't know how to pronounce these people's names. I only know them by writing. I usually haven't heard their names out loud. We hate to see a pregnant woman in a thriller. It's like automatic stakes. Max von Sydow, known for The Exorcist, Minority Report, Seventh Seal, and he showed up for like the blink of an eye in Game of Thrones. Even at that age, he has that distinct, that iconic Max von Sydow voice. Why don't you visit me at my cottage? That's my Minority Report von Sydow. He's looking good at that age, I gotta say. Got his gravitas, but he's also got kind of like a young James Woods energy going for him. And Liv, always looking like a snack. It's interesting to watch this as like a modern movie-going audience, because like these exact same scenes have been kind of like recontextualized for different times. I'm under the impression at the time they're meant to like build atmosphere and just establish a baseline of tension or conflict. These days, if we watch a thriller like this, the way these like introductory scenes are cut and edited and presented, you get Ari Aster syndrome. You think that every one of these scenes is meant to give foreshadowing or have like an Easter egg of what's going to happen in the rest of the movie. Like details of his paintings or in the sketches in the background will indicate what'll happen over the course of this film.
Jag tror han är homosexuell. Sen är det den gamla damen. Hon som ständigt hotar att ta av sig hatt. Ansiktet följer med, förstår du.
Well, that's not good.
Här är den värsta av dem. Jag kallar honom fågelmannen.
Bergman is the worst.
Steklarna. Särskilt spindelgubbarna. Skolmagistern med pekpinnen i byxorna.
It's a little sexual.
Alla de tjattrande metallhårda kvinnorna. Du måste vara vaken en stund.
So is he like having a psychotic episode or something like that, and he wants like to take his wife with him into like the hour of the wolf so that she could see the same things that he sees?
Sen kan jag sova.
Okay, so an hour before dawn is when he's able to sleep, so that means the hour before that would be the eponymous hour of the wolf.
Det är nog jag tänkt på ganska länge. Hör du på? Er det ikke så at gamle mennesker som har levet en hel livstid til sammen börjar likna hverandre? Vi blir så gamla att vi tänker hverandres tanker.
That's interesting.
Sorry.
Might this movie be about kind of like the limits of ego within a relationship? The kind of like desire to be completely intertwined, but have things that are inexpressible to your partner. Things like your fears, your unconscious, your nightmares. Mr. Nyquist is being very perfunctory with his camera setups so far. Shooting it almost inelegantly flat. These are probably not the shots that are his focus, but it's just something to note. Let's see a stranger in the distance. We'd love to see that. Ooh, not even in the distance.
Jag är ju i alla fall 216 år.
You hate to see it.
Vad är det jag säger? Nej, nu ska väl jag gå vidare.
Okay, bye.
Vad var det nu jag skulle säga?
This is a cool shot, though. This is very haunting.
Nu kommer jag ihåg det. I hans svarta axelväska som ligger under stolen finns det där och så en sak till. I samma väska gömmer han sin dam. Läs det.
Oh boy. We are in trouble. I love the cadence of the Swedish language. It has a kind of sing-songiness that betrays a kind of like innocence that is a wonderful contrast to the scary shit that goes down in Bergman films. We don't usually think of Bergman as being like a particularly scary director, but he does have a fascination with like the horrific or the grotesque or the uncanny in his films. It really is an art house Ari Aster.
Onsdagen den 22 juli. Jag har just varit sjuk.
A lot of diagonals in the landscape setups, the location shots. You know, it's like Arrested Development. It's like Sun and Valley. I love the kind of like sense of subtle danger or risk that these location shots pose.
Mitt namn är von Merkens, baron von Merkens.
Var?
Skulle ni och hustru möjligen vilja äta en enkel familjemiddag hemma hos oss?
Always join the Baron for a dinner. That's always a good idea.
Ja, jag borde kanske säga att min hustru och jag hör till era beundrare. Jag törs kanske säga till era varmaste beundrare.
He hasn't made it very far through that diary yet. She's so pretty. Oh, who's coming? Danger. Just these long ass shots of people coming forward into frame. Can't believe she made that whole walk barefoot. How awful. Don't do it. Hey!
Ser du det här märket?
Oh.
Du måste vara lite försiktig, min älskade.
Oh
Annars
boy.
slutar Jag har något som jag måste tala med dig om.
That was a crazy zoom. Was that a cut so that they could have a cleaner kind of
Så här är det.
close-up composition?
Ni ser inte oss, men vi ser er. Det nesligaste kan hända. Drömmarna kan bli uppenbarade. Slutet är nära. Källorna ska torka. Och det blir andra vätskor som ska fukta era vita.
Yeah. I kind of like the idea that this island is comprised of just like annoying ghosts. Like ghosts that just continue to pester the island inhabitants for like meetings or appointments.
Det blåser bra. Men det är grant. Mitt namn är Herbrandt, kurator. Jag tummar på spelarna och vänder ut insidan. Blir ni hund? I nerven är olag. Något som plågar.
Jesus.
Håll käften! Håll käften!
So is he having like schizophrenic delusions? Is this a real guy? It seems like he's being plagued by many ghosts.
Jag tror jag må be dem lite mer pengar. De jag fick först I månaden är nästan slut. Nej, du ska inte bara hiva fram pengar på det sättet. Du ska se på mina räkenskaper. Det blir över 200 kronor. 219.
Okay. Maybe don't spend
pengar och
40% of your monthly budget on groceries.
Och nya batterier till skavaren.
But I guess, I mean, that might be fine if it just represents your spending and not your income.
Du må förresten köpa en ny tandborste. Den du har ser förskräcklig ut. Du kan räkna efter och se om det stämmer.
Seem to be having a lot of communication issues. Maybe not like a lot, but it seems to be the theme of their relationship right now is miscommunication.
Jag vet det.
Hur vet du det?
God dag. Ja,
Hey, Erland Josefsson. And we again have the kind of I don't even know what to call it, but this was the kind of the angle taken in Fanny and Alexander treating the camera, or just off of the camera, as the POV of the characters.
Ja, familjer är fullkomligt oförmögna att känna aggression. Nåja, en viss byråkratisk hämndlystnad kan jag kanske åstadkomma.
Communication issues. And I kind of like this. This is like everything feels like what it feels like to be an introvert at parties, but this does feel like this is highlighting kind of the communication issues they have as a couple by immersing them in these kind of very extroverted, conversationalist, overbearing partygoers. All these people who are willing to shoot the shit over the smallest or largest topics when this couple can't really talk directly to each other. I don't like that look. I mean, they may be married in scenes from Married, but they ain't married here. This all seems very, stressful, but this is a good scheme for, arranging guests at a party table. You don't want the same people who came in sitting with each other and just forming the same old conversations. It's good to meet new people. It does seem a bit like an introvert's nightmare, though. Oh no, we're getting puppets. I watched listened to a podcast recently that said that Ingmar Bergman doesn't enjoy music. They kind of compared him unfavorably to one of his derivatives. They said that specifically Woody Allen loves music in a way that Ingmar Bergman obviously doesn't. I don't really go for that much. I kind of agree that Woody Allen uses music much more liberally and ecstatically in his work, but I wouldn't go so far as to say Ingmar Bergman doesn't love music. I think he's very, very specific with the way he employs it, and it can sometimes be in a cold or specific fashion related to his experience in the theater and the opera. But I definitely wouldn't say he hates music. A lot of his great scenes, like this, are set specifically to music.
Dessa ord upplever den det sjuke Mozart med hemlig närhet. Balt yngling. Åder ni någonsin skrivits.
Yeah.
Tamino frågar.
I'm of the impression
Levet en Pamina noch?
Bergman likes music.
Och så konstens högsta uppenbarelse. Eller hur, herr konstnär?
Oh boy. Excuse me. Yeah, this isn't exactly my field.
Kom, får vi lite luft vi.
The cuts in this are so illogical. They do kind of give off the sense that this is like a rolling nightmare. It just passes from one passage to the next.
Vi kysser aldrig varandra, har du tänkt på det?
Det finns något som skrämmer mig till vanvett. Jag möter en främmande man på vägen. Jag kan aldrig glömma mannens ögon. Det värsta var hans ögon.
These cuts are crazy. I'm kind of getting the sense this is pure speculation, but in a kind of 8.5-ish way, I kind of get the sense from this movie that it's like about an artist who is perhaps surrounded by too many fans or too many critics, and all those kind of voices are seeding doubts and concerns and suspicions and recriminations upon himself.
Nu ska du få se någonting riktigt vackert som din man har gjort. Här är tavlan. Vet du om min säng? Den har blivit som en del av mitt ensamma liv. Jag älskar henne.
Her face is a whole mood.
Hur länge levde ni tillsammans? Förlåt att jag frågar så personligt.
Did he have a...
5 år.
Jaså? Det har han berättat.
Oh, right, because he has a son, so maybe he have a former wife.
Prima skandal den gången.
It's Rebecca.
Men så romantiskt. Se på det här märket förresten.
Why do they keep showing marks?
En annan mans, ska vi säga, framfart. Kan du hjälpa mig? Alma lilla, bli inte ond.
These women keep... It's going into this like kind of like nightmare scenario. He keeps on getting induced into these similar patterns with these women. They show him a mark and then ask him to help them with a dress.
Intressant.
Jag ser att någonting kommer på henne, någonting som är ont. Just därför att man inte vet vad man ska kalla det. Men du tror jag tänkte springa min väg.
You're gonna die. I mean, I know she's not because she's in the epilogue, but or the postscript, but.
Så länge jag är med, det är mycket svårare. Jag tänker inte springa min väg, om jag igen försöker. Johan spar mig.
Are we gonna pull back from this shot? Yeah. That was interesting. I think they just like blew up the frame. I really wish I knew what was going on with him. Oh, he's holding that close to his eye. You are going to burn your retina. Cut. It's basically Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh. Love that idea. That's so cool. I kind of love these liminal spaces, or these kind of like portal worlds or dimensions that Bergman creates with some of his films. This was happening a lot in Fanny and Alexander with like the magic lantern and like with the puppet show, and with the genius brother who had been locked away these like spaces that you walk through that are like portals into a different dimension of logic and consequences that seems like our world, but are a facsimile or or an artifice like Alice in Wonderland designed to trick us and lure us. That seemed to be born out of trauma, if that's something that Fanny and Alexander is suggesting. Imagination and trauma. And this was a scene also explored in Fanny and Alexander when their stepfather struck Alexander over and over again for telling lies. I would love if she fell asleep during this monologue. It'd be so sad, because she's trying her best for her husband, but she just can't enter this same space. She can't be inside of his head and understand him the way that he wants to be understood. But yeah, this is a bit too heightened and ridiculous and extreme for, you know, for my psychological thriller. This is like beyond the bounds of ghosts and ghouls and goblins. At this point, I'm like, you know, I don't really care about the interior psychology of Max von Sydow. He just needs to be arrested if he killed his son. And, you know, if this is happens to be kind of if this is like a ruse and that was like a hallucination, like a schizophrenic delusion on his part, then I don't know. It's still like raising the stakes far too extreme for a movie where we're meant to be invested in him as a character to a certain degree.
Fine med mig var att Gud hade gjort mig att jag hade hela tankar och hela känslor. Jag tyckte det låt så fint. Jag blev så lycklig.
Yeah, artists do be saying stuff though.
Jag hade fel.
Those are just words that people say to
Jag förstår ingenting. Jag förstår inte
to
dig.
bed and to wed.
Du är bara rädd. Jag tror det vill stanna här och kanske bli ihjälslagen.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I guess we're still within the realms of the theme of like never being able to fully understand or embrace, never being able to fully understand our partners and see what's going on inside of their head, and whether or not you can like still make the leap of faith to trust them or to devote yourself to them.
Nej. Gå inte.
Again.
Hjälp mig med strumporna, är ni snäll.
If I were to say that any of these were like self-reflective and were, you know, indications of how Bergman perceives himself, I would say that he kind of thinks of himself as much more of a ladies' man than anybody I know. I have to say, as like a string of individual scenes, like this movie has a lot of great ideas and iconography to it. To try and take it as a coherent psychological or narrative story is a bit much to grapple with. Erland.
Förlåt mig, jag trodde att ni alltid vill. Ni kommer för att söka Veronica Fågler. Jag bör kanske nämna för er innan ni möter den att fru Veronica har varit min älskarinna sedan flera år tillbaka. Kom, ska jag visa vägen.
This is a cool shot. I don't know if it was like good enough justification to have the exact same setup shot from a different angle, but that was a really cool shot. This is a cool shot too. This movie is like a collection of so many good ideas. Yeah. Really, really interesting stuff if you want to like, if you want to pull for and like another kind of like horror or psychological thriller kind of movie. I swear to God, like Bergman just watched last year at Marienbad.
Mr. Chrysler är en mästare på sitt instrument.
Tycker ni inte Veronica har väntat tillräckligt länge nu? Hon började bereda sig för ert besök redan tidigt i morse. Hon har blivit ännu vackrare.
Och en sån underbar musik.
Slutar att ta av sig hatten. Vet du vad som händer
Jag
då?
tror jag måste ta av mig hatten. Så
Ansiktet
hör
följer
jag
med.
bättre.
She has a wig on. That's great. I can like also see Nicholas Ray watching this for The Witches. Nicholas Ray, what am I talking about? Oh. Nicholas Rogue.
Ni är kära vän så ni ser ut. Men era läppar är ju blå som av blåbär. Det måste vi hjälpa upp. Sätt det. En vacker amorbåge. Mycket ägande.
It's interesting. It's like kind of interesting to watch this as a companion piece to Fanny and Alexander of all things. Like this wasn't a massive hit and critics kind of like were split on it, but it's interesting to see like what kind of fails here that arguably succeeded critically for Fanny and Alexander, because in some ways I see the same sequences play out in this as in that, a kind of to a certain degree, not totally, but to a certain degree, a character that's a stand-in for Bergman, and a mixture of kind of his dual identities or his conflicting identities as a young child experiencing the world through a powerful imagination, and also him being an adult artist with like issues of conflict in his marriage and with his artistic career and goals, going through this kind of like liminal space, this kind of supernatural space of exploring the two simultaneously, the kind of like surreal imagery that comes out of that, and like these kind of ghosts that flow in and out and present trials or mysteries for the protagonist to kind of understand or endure. The things I would attribute to Fanny and Alexander's success is that it's a child protagonist, so you're like more likely to be on their side and kind of like understand their perspective and their innocence, their wonder, their curiosity, and horror within these situations. The dream world from a child's perspective, it's more Alice in Wonderlandy. It's less literal and horrific, and from an adult perspective, it's kind of like you see it as like a psychotic break. It's not as understandable, because they say it in Fanny and Alexander too, that children live in like the fantasy world and eventually like breaks off when we become adults, and so to see it from an adult perspective is more jarring and perhaps less intuitive. Also, like this is kind of difficult to suss out, but and to talk out. But Fanny and Alexander, this presents itself as like a psychological horror, and Fanny and Alexander presents itself as a drama with fantastical elements. So I think the difference in that, in terms of striking a tone and evoking genre, is that as horror films go as a genre, we're less likely to take these things seriously. So these things kind of like, if they have meaning, it's like an absurdist meaning to an audience. And that's not a difference in terms of the artist or their presentation of subject. It's simply a difference of how an audience kind of like receives that information. Like with Fanny and Alexander, because we spent so much time with it being a family drama, that when it reaches into the surreal and the mystical, it kind of evokes a kind of a sublimation of the ideas and concepts that were already being explored literally. Whereas this, being a horror movie from the outright, we kind of don't see it as like a thematic progression, just a mechanical progression. This is a progression of like things that a horror movie will do to kind of scare you or to get a rise out of you, but it's not necessarily conjuring the psychological rigor of this is an examination of a character's interior state, a serious examination of a character's interior state and the meaning behind the symbology and the nuance and the mystery of it. It's just a lot of nonsense that is parading around in a character's head, as opposed to an evocation of experiences we've all had. I don't know. Yo, the lapels on that robe are intense. It's weird that she's wearing earrings. I'm shocked by how clear her skin is. Genuinely shocked. Vagina. There's apparently not a director alive who's not afraid of the sound of a woman laughing. Joker. Pennywise. I personally have a really hard time understanding this story from Alma's perspective. In some ways, I kind of see this as like two different movies occurring simultaneously that don't know how to find the tandem with each other. What is her like role in this movie other than to bear witness to the breakdown of her husband? Like she doesn't seem like transformational or contributory to his emotional climax. It's interesting. I mean, why doesn't the man become like the woman?
Jag menar att om jag hade älskat han mindre
would you have still been able to see them?
Hade jag kunnat skydda han bättre I så fall? Om jag bara hade kunnat följa han hela tiden.
It's very, very, very paranoid conception of love.
Det så mycket man går och funderar på.
Who knows with ghosts, man? It's such a toss-up. It seems perhaps out of the control of your love. But that last conception of what it means to like love another person and to it feels like the conception of love of somebody who like just got out of a relationship. Like it's very kind of like paranoid and possessive. The idea that a partner is somebody that you have to like kind of like safeguard constantly, that your relationship or your conception of each other is constantly under attack from a vicious and malicious world. It's like, yeah, it sounds like somebody who just got out of a relationship, honestly. And in terms of the portrayal of Johan as an artist and stuff, like if we allow ourselves to psychologize a little bit too much, this kind of seems like maybe a story of Bergman receiving too much international success following Persona, and this is like kind of a darker, much darker version of 8.5, which itself was already pretty dark, of an artist kind of like inundated with adoring fans and critics and people trying to interpret and misinterpret his work, and the cacophony of voices that drowns out artistic integrity, psychological integrity as a result. I can't say this was my favorite, but I think like if you take it as a succession of consecutive cool images or scenes, there's a lot to draw from this movie. We kind of think of Bergman as like prestige material now, only to be watched by very serious filmmakers and film lovers, but there's definitely room for directors coming up to like watch his material as like as inspiration for genre fare, as opposed to like this kind of like stately masterpiece director whose work is unapproachable and can't be referenced without highlighting flaws. Like, for example, like with Wes Craven seeing The Virgin Spring and drawing inspiration from it for The Last House on the Left, Bergman's handprint on horror is there and is an interesting wrinkle on his legacy, I gotta say. Yeah, I think this was a fascinating piece to observe as like from a horror movie standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, perhaps not from a completely emotional standpoint. But yeah, it was a fun movie nonetheless. That was The Hour of the Wolf. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, click the like button and subscribe. If you want to see more stuff like this, let me know some suggestions you have for films you want to see on the docket. And until then, stay away from the hours of 3 to 5 and keep watching good movies.